Bullies took the new kid's belongings and announced a trash auction, humiliating the small boy. Big mistake. They had no idea he was a brutal fighter. Aiden Novak kept his head down as he navigated the crowded hallways of Westridge High School. At 15, he was used to being the new kid. His father's military career had moved them 6 times in the last decade, but that didn't make starting over any easier, especially not when you were 5'6", weighed barely 120 pounds soaking wet, and had a slight stutter that emerged whenever you got nervous, which, at Westridge, was pretty much all the time. It was his 3rd week at the school, and Aiden had already mapped out the safest routes between classes, identified which bathroom stalls were least likely to be occupied by upperclassmen looking for freshmen to torment, and figured out which corner of the cafeteria attracted the least attention. He wasn't exactly thriving, but he was surviving. What no one at Westridge knew, what no one had bothered to ask, was that Aiden had been training in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu since he was 6 years old. His father, a former Army Ranger, had insisted on it. "The world isn't always kind, son," he'd explained. "Sometimes you need to know how to protect yourself." By age 12, Aiden had earned his blue belt. At 14, he'd won the junior national championship in his weight class. Now at 15, he was training for internationals. Not that anyone at Westridge cared. Here, he was just the skinny new kid with the stutter. Aiden had made a promise to his father before starting at Westridge. After an incident at his previous school, where Aiden had put a bully in an armbar that required medical attention, his father had made him swear, "No fighting unless your life depends on it. Your mother and I can't keep transferring you to new schools." So Aiden kept his head down, his mouth shut, and his skills hidden. Even when Derek Chambers and his crew started targeting him, Derek was everything Aiden wasn't. Tall, muscular, confident, and popular. The junior varsity quarterback had a cruel streak that the teachers either didn't notice or chose to ignore. His 2 main sidekicks, Marcus Wilson and Trevor Lee, were equally unpleasant, though they mostly followed Derek's lead. The harassment started small: shoulder checks in the hallway, snickering when Aiden was called on in class, the occasional mocking imitation of his stutter. "Hey there, Aiden Novak," Derek would say as Marcus and Trevor laughed on cue. Aiden ignored them. He'd promised his father after all, but each day it got worse. On Monday, they knocked his lunch tray out of his hands. On Tuesday, they stole his gym clothes and flushed them down the toilet. On Wednesday, they tripped him in the hallway, sending his books and papers flying as students walked by, either pretending not to notice or actually laughing at his misfortune. Through it all, Aiden told himself the same thing: this is temporary. Don't react. Don't give them what they want. Even when the rage boiled inside him, even when his hands instinctively curled into fists, even when he imagined how easily he could take all 3 of them down, he restrained himself. The promise to his father, the knowledge that fighting would mean another transfer, another new school, starting over yet again. Ms. Patel, his English teacher, was the only one who seemed to notice something was wrong. "Is everything okay, Aiden?" she asked after class one day, when Derek had spent the entire period flicking small paper balls at the back of Aiden's head. "Fine," Aiden had replied, forcing a smile. "Just adjusting." Ms. Patel looked unconvinced, but she didn't press the issue. "My door is always open if you need to talk," she offered. Aiden nodded politely, knowing he would never take her up on it. What was she going to do? Stop Derek, the son of the school board president? Not likely. By Thursday of his 3rd week, Aiden had developed a routine: arrive at school just before the bell, slip into class unnoticed, eat lunch in the library. Food wasn't allowed, but the librarian, Mrs. Foster, took pity on him, and leave campus as quickly as possible when the final bell rang. It wasn't a great system, but it minimized his exposure to Derek and his cronies. Then came Friday, the day everything changed. Aiden had been keeping a low profile all week, but he'd made a critical error that morning. He'd forgotten his math textbook in his locker after 2nd period, which meant that during lunch, while most students were in the cafeteria, he'd have to venture into the hallways to retrieve it. No big deal, he told himself as he slipped out of the library. Derek and his crew will be in the cafeteria, in and out, 2 minutes tops. The hallway was mostly empty, just a few students chatting by the water fountain. Aiden reached his locker, spun the combination and grabbed his textbook. Relief washed over him. "See? Nothing to worry about." Then he heard them. Well. Look who it is. All alone in the hallway. Derek's voice sent a chill down Aiden's spine. He turned slowly to find Derek, Marcus, and Trevor blocking his path back to the library. "Hi, guys," Aiden said, clutching his textbook to his chest. "I was just heading back to where?" Derek interrupted, stepping closer. Back to hiding in the library like a little bitch? Marcus and Trevor snickered. I'm not hiding, Aiden said, straightening his shoulders slightly. I just like to read. Derek's eyes narrowed. You think you're smart, don't you? Better than us, Aiden shook his head. No, I don't think that at all. Sure sounds like it to me, Derek said, taking another step forward. Doesn't it sound like that to you guys? Marcus and Trevor nodded in unison. Definitely, Marcus agreed. He thinks he's better than us. Maybe we should show him he's not. Trevor suggested with a malicious grin. Aiden took a step back, his back now against the lockers. His heart was pounding, but not from fear, from the effort it took to restrain himself, to remember his promise. Don't fight unless your life depends on it. Look, Aiden said, forcing his stutter under control through sheer willpower. I don't want any trouble. Derek laughed. That's too bad, because trouble wants you. And then, in one swift motion, Derek grabbed Aiden's backpack from the floor. Beside him. Let's see what Novak's got in here, he said, unzipping it and dumping the contents onto the hallway floor. Binders, notebooks, pencils, and Aiden's phone clattered across the linoleum. But that wasn't all. A small framed photo fell out. A picture of Aiden at 12 years old, standing proudly with his father after winning his first jiu-jitsu tournament. Aiden reached for it, but Marcus was faster, snatching it up. What's this? Marcus asked, examining the photo. Baby Novak playing dress-up? Give that back, Aiden said, his voice suddenly clear and firm. Now, something in his tone made Marcus hesitate, but Derek just laughed, grabbing the photo. Look at this, Derek sneered. Novak thinks he's some kind of fighter. He turned the photo toward Aiden. Is that why you don't fight back? Because you know it's all fake? Because you know in a real fight you'd get your ass kicked? Aiden said nothing, but his hands had curled into fists at his sides. I think we'll keep this, Derek decided, pocketing the photo. And the rest of your stuff too. He nodded to Marcus and Trevor, who began scooping up Aiden's belongings. We're having a little event at lunch tomorrow, in the courtyard. The first annual Novak garbage auction. Everyone's invited. Aiden's blood ran cold. What are you talking about? Derek grinned. We're going to auction off all your pathetic belongings to the highest bidder. Your notebooks, your phone, maybe even this stupid picture of you playing ninja. He patted his pocket. It'll be hilarious. You can't do that, Aiden said, his voice barely above a whisper. Watch me, Derek replied. And if you tell anyone, or if you don't show up to watch, he let the threat hang in the air. The bell rang, signaling the end of lunch period. Students began to fill the hallway. See you tomorrow, Novak, Derek said with a smirk. Don't be late. As the three bullies walked away with his belongings, Aiden stood frozen, his mind racing. The promise to his father echoed in his head, but so did another voice. A voice telling him that sometimes enough was enough. That night, Aiden barely slept. He tossed and turned, replaying the hallway confrontation over and over in his mind. The photo of him and his father was irreplaceable, taken just weeks before his father was deployed to Afghanistan for a year. The thought of Derek and his friends mocking it, auctioning it off as garbage, it made Aiden's blood boil. But what could he do? If he told his parents, they'd either contact the school, which would only make things worse, or transfer him, which would mean starting over yet again. If he fought back, he'd break his promise. Unless your life depends on it, his father had said. Physical danger wasn't the only threat in this world. Aiden knew that. Sometimes your dignity, your self-respect, your very identity was at stake. And maybe that was just as important as physical safety. By morning, Aiden had made his decision. He entered Westridge High with his head held higher than usual. Students whispered as he passed, word of the upcoming garbage auction having spread like wildfire. Some looked at him with pity, others with anticipation, a few with disgust at what was happening, but none with the courage to stand up to Derek and his crew. Throughout his morning classes, Aiden felt eerily calm. Ms. Patel even commented. On it during English, you seem different today, Aiden, she observed as he answered a question about To Kill a Mockingbird without a hint of his usual stutter. Just feeling more myself, Ms. Patel, he replied with a small smile. When lunch period arrived, Aiden didn't hide in the library. Instead, he walked directly to the courtyard, where a crowd had already gathered around a makeshift platform constructed from cafeteria tables. Derek stood on top, holding a bullhorn, with Marcus and Trevor flanking him. A table beside them displayed Aiden's belongings, arranged like items at a yard sale. The crowd parted as Aiden approached, whispers following in his wake. Didn't think you'd show, a girl named Emma said as he passed. She was in his math class, and while she'd never been unkind to him, she'd never stood up for him either. Wouldn't miss it, Aiden replied, his voice steady. He stopped at the edge of the circle just as Derek spotted him. "Ladies and gentlemen," Derek announced through the bullhorn, "welcome to the first and hopefully not last Novak garbage auction. Today we'll be selling off the prized possessions of Westridge's very own stuttering freak, Aiden N.N. Novak." Laughter rippled through the crowd, though it sounded uncertain, nervous. Derek held up Aiden's phone. "Let's start the bidding with this pathetic excuse for a smartphone. Who'll give me $1? 75 cents? How about a piece of gum?" More laughter, stronger this time. Derek," Trevor said, putting on an exaggerated stutter. "Don't forget the special item." "Ah, yes," Derek grinned, pulling the framed photo from his pocket. "The pièce de résistance. Little Aiden playing dress-up with Daddy. Maybe he can teach us all how to wrestle." And that was it. The breaking point. Aiden stepped forward into the circle. The crowd fell silent. "Give it back," he said, his voice clear and commanding. Derek looked surprised for a moment, then recovered with a smirk. "Or what, Novak? You'll stutter at me?" Aiden took another step forward. "I won't ask again." Something, in his tone, in his posture, made the smirk falter on Derek's face, but pride quickly reasserted itself. "Come and get it, tough guy," Derek challenged, holding the photo high. Aiden walked calmly to the edge of the makeshift platform. Without hesitation, he hoisted himself up in one fluid motion, now standing face to face with Derek. The courtyard was dead silent now. Even the teachers on lunch duty had noticed something was happening, though they were still too far away to intervene. "Last chance," Aiden said quietly, so that only Derek, Marcus, and Trevor could hear. "Give me back my stuff, apologize, and we can all walk away from this." Derek's face flushed with anger. "Who the hell do you think you are?" he snarled, shoving Aiden's chest, or trying to. Aiden didn't budge. Instead, his hand shot out, gripping Derek's wrist with surprising strength. "I'm the junior national champion in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu," Aiden said calmly, "and you're holding a picture of me and my father that means more to me than you could possibly understand." Derek's eyes widened in shock, but his pride wouldn't let him back down, not in front of the entire school. He swung his free hand in a wild punch aimed at Aiden's face. Aiden didn't even flinch. In one smooth motion, he sidestepped the punch, swept Derek's legs out from under him, and sent the larger boy crashing to the platform with a controlled throw that knocked the wind out of him, but caused no serious damage. The crowd gasped. Marcus and Trevor, after a moment of stunned immobility, rushed at Aiden from both sides. Aiden moved with a grace that seemed impossible for someone his size. He ducked under Marcus's wild swing, caught his arm, and used the boy's own momentum to flip him over his shoulder, sending him sprawling next to Derek. Trevor, seeing his friends taken down so easily, hesitated. But then, with a roar of anger, he charged forward. Aiden met him head-on, blocking a punch, countering with a palm strike to the sternum that staggered Trevor backward, then following with a sweep that sent him tumbling off the platform. The entire sequence took less than 15 seconds. Aiden stood alone on the platform now, surrounded by his 3 tormentors, all groaning and trying to catch their breath. The photo frame had fallen from Derek's hand when he hit the platform. Aiden picked it up, checked that the glass wasn't cracked, then tucked it carefully into his pocket. The courtyard was utterly silent. Students and teachers alike stared in disbelief. Then, methodically, Aiden began collecting his belongings from the display table. His phone, his notebooks, his backpack. One by one, he reclaimed what was his, as the crowd watched in stunned silence. When he had gathered everything, he turned to face the student body of Westridge High. For the first time since arriving, he didn't feel like the outsider, the target, the victim. He felt like himself. "My name is Aiden Novak," he announced, his voice carrying across the courtyard without a hint of stutter. "I'm new here. I enjoy reading, math, and Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, which I've been practicing for 9 years. I don't like bullies and I don't like being bullied. If anyone has a problem with that, I'm happy to discuss it." He paused, looking pointedly at Derek, who was just now sitting up, a hand pressed to his ribs, preferably with words. No one spoke. No one moved. Aiden hopped down from the platform with his recovered belongings and walked calmly toward the nearest building entrance. The crowd parted before him, murmurs of amazement following in his wake. Just before he reached the door, he felt a hand on his shoulder. Turning, he found Ms. Patel looking at him with a complex expression, part concern, part admiration, part professional disapproval. "Principal's office," she said quietly. "Now." Aiden nodded. He'd expected as much. "It was worth it," he said, meaning it. Ms. Patel's lips twitched, almost forming a smile before she caught herself. "We'll see about that." The aftermath of what quickly became known as the platform takedown was complicated. Principal Walsh, a stern woman who prided herself on running a disciplined school, initially wanted to suspend all 4 boys involved in the incident. But the facts were inconvenient. Over a dozen witnesses confirmed that Derek, Marcus, and Trevor had stolen Aiden's belongings and organized a public humiliation campaign. There was also the awkward matter of Derek's father being the school board president, a man who would not be pleased to learn his son was the ringleader of a bullying scheme. In the end, all 4 received after-school detention for 2 weeks, a punishment that seemed to acknowledge everyone was partly at fault while avoiding real accountability for the true instigators. But the unofficial consequences were far more significant. Derek, Marcus, and Trevor found themselves suddenly stripped of their social capital. Being publicly humiliated by the skinny new kid damaged their carefully constructed images as untouchable alpha males. The fact that they had been targeting one of the few genuine athletes in the school, a champion fighter no less, made them look not just cruel but stupid. As for Aiden, his status underwent a seismic shift. He wasn't instantly popular. Westridge's social hierarchy was too entrenched for that, but he was respected. No one mocked his occasional stutter anymore. People made way for him in the hallways, not out of fear, but deference. Classmates who had previously ignored him now sought him out for group projects. Most surprising was the change in Emma, the girl from his math class. The Monday after the incident, she slid into the seat next to him in the cafeteria. He no longer needed to hide in the library and introduced herself properly. "That was pretty amazing what you did," she said without preamble. Aiden shrugged. "I didn't want to fight. They didn't give me a choice." "Why did you let them bully you for so long? You could have stopped them on day 1. Aiden considered the question. "I promised my dad I wouldn't fight unless I had to. I've been moved around a lot, and at my last school there was an incident." He trailed off. "Anyway, I was trying to keep that promise." Emma nodded thoughtfully. "And the photo? What was so special about it?" Aiden pulled the frame from his backpack and showed her. "This was taken right before my dad was deployed to Afghanistan. He was gone for a year. We didn't know if he'd..." He swallowed hard. "It's just important to me." Emma studied the photo. "You were a cute kid," she observed with a small smile. "And not a bad fighter either, apparently." From across the cafeteria, Aiden spotted Derek watching them, his expression dark. Their eyes met briefly before Derek looked away. "You should probably watch your back," Emma warned, following his gaze. "Derek isn't the type to let things go." "I'm not worried about Derek," Aiden replied, and it was true. Not because he was confident he could handle Derek in a fight, though he was, but because something fundamental had shifted in their dynamic. Derek had seen the truth of who Aiden was, and that knowledge had power. 3 days later, Aiden was storing books in his locker after school when he sensed someone approaching. He turned to find Derek standing there, alone. Aiden tensed, ready for confrontation, but Derek's posture wasn't aggressive. If anything, he looked uncomfortable. "Novak?" Derek said by way of greeting. "Derek," Aiden replied cautiously, "looking for a rematch because..." "No," Derek interrupted quickly. "No, that's not why I'm here." They stood in awkward silence for a moment. "That move you used on me," Derek finally said. "The one where you swept my legs, what's it called?" Aiden blinked in surprise. "It's called Osotogari. It's a basic throw." Derek nodded as if filing this information away. "And you compete in this stuff for real?" "Yes. I've been doing it since I was 6. Another uncomfortable silence. "My dad says I should learn self-defense," Derek said abruptly. "Says it builds character." Aiden almost laughed at the irony, but managed to keep his expression neutral. "It can if you approach it right." Derek shifted his weight from one foot to the other. "The thing is, there's this gym downtown. They teach that Brazilian stuff. My dad wants me to check it out, but..." He trailed off, clearly struggling with what he wanted to say. Aiden waited. "I don't know anything about it," Derek finally admitted. "And I don't want to look like an idiot walking in there." Understanding dawned on Aiden. "And you want me to, what, give you some tips?" Derek's face flushed. "Forget it, stupid idea, just forget I said anything." He turned to go. "Wait," Aiden called after him. Derek paused, looking back. "I train." "At Gracie Barra on Oak Street," Aiden said. "They have beginner classes on Tuesdays and Thursdays. Tell them you know me and they'll give you a free trial week." Derek stared at him, visibly confused by the offer of help. "Why would you do that? After what I did?" Aiden considered the question. "Because jiu-jitsu isn't just about fighting. It's about respect, control, knowing when to use your strength and when to show restraint." He closed his locker. "Sounds like lessons that might be useful for both of us." Derek said nothing for a long moment. Then, with a slight nod that could have been interpreted as either acknowledgement or gratitude, he walked away. Whether Derek would actually show up at Gracie Barra, Aidan couldn't say, but the very fact that the conversation had happened represented a shift in the atmosphere at Westridge, a rebalancing of power, a redistribution of respect. That evening, as Aidan recounted the day's events to his parents over dinner, his father regarded him with a mixture of pride and concern. "So you broke your promise," his father observed, though there was no anger in his voice. "Yes and no," Aidan replied. "You said not to fight unless my life depended on it, and maybe my life, the life I want to live, with dignity and self-respect, did depend on it." His father considered this, then slowly nodded. "Fair point. And you showed restraint. You could have hurt them badly, but you didn't." "That's not what jiu-jitsu is about," Aidan said. "It's not about hurting people. It's about control over yourself as much as your opponent." His father smiled. "Sounds like someone's been paying attention to his training." Aidan returned the smile. "I had a good teacher." Later that night, as Aidan prepared for bed, he noticed a text message from an unknown number. Opening it, he found a simple question. "Those beginner classes, what should I wear?" He recognized the number from the class contact list Ms. Patel had distributed. It was Derek's. Aidan smiled to himself as he typed a reply explaining the basics of jiu-jitsu attire and etiquette. Perhaps there was hope for Derek after all. Perhaps there was hope for all of them. The next day at school, Aidan walked the hallways with his head held high, not with arrogance, but with the quiet confidence of someone who had found his place in the world. He wasn't just the new kid anymore. He wasn't defined by his stutter or his size or even his fighting skills. He was Aidan Novak, student, fighter, and person worthy of respect. Not because he had taken down 3 bullies in 15 seconds flat, impressive as that might have been, but because he had remained true to himself in the face of pressure to be less than he was. As he entered Miss Patel's English class and took his seat, Emma leaned over to whisper, "I heard Derek might be joining your martial arts gym. Is that true?" Aidan smiled. "We'll see. Everyone deserves a second chance." Emma raised an eyebrow. "Even bullies?" "Especially bullies," Aidan replied. "They're usually the ones who need it most." Ms. Patel called the class to attention, and as Aidan opened his notebook, his recovered notebook, he felt a sense of peace wash over him. Westridge wasn't perfect, and his journey here wasn't over. But for the first time since arriving, he felt like he might actually belong, not because he had changed to fit in, but because he had finally shown everyone, including himself, exactly who he was. And sometimes that made all the difference.